Oil tankers passing through the Gulf via the Strait of Hormuz has become the focus of a US-Iranian standoff. Explosions damaged 6 tankers in May and June, and last month Iran seized a British-flagged tanker.
The US, joined by Britain, then launched a maritime security mission in the Gulf to protect merchant vessels. Washington has also reimposed sanctions on Tehran after pulling out of an international nuclear deal with the country last year.
Iran's foreign minister recently accused the U.S. of turning the Gulf region into a matchbox ready to ignite.
Now, for more insight on this, we're joined in studio by Karim Sajjadpour. He's Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Karim, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So that description by the Iranian foreign minister, a matchbox ready to ignite, is that a fair way to describe the situation?
I think it is. I think the danger is not that the United States is going to war like we did against Iraq in 2003, a major regime change operation. I think the danger is one of miscalculation, lack of communication. I don't think either U.S. President Donald Trump or Iran's leadership wants war, but the likelihood of miscommunication and miscalculation is very high.
Well, Iran is also blaming the U.S. for raising tensions in the Middle East. Is it justified in, saying this, though?
You know, for 4 decades now, the United States and Iran have been pointing fingers at one another. The reality is that Iran is a country very much isolated in the Middle East. Whether you look at Saudi Arabia or smaller Gulf countries or Israel, there's a growing perception among regional countries that Iran is the most destabilizing actor. And in contrast to the Obama administration, which really sought to de-escalate relations with Iran, the Trump administration has taken the opposite course, and they've really sought to escalate with Iran.
And why do you think that is?
I think part of it is the fact that President Trump has opposed every major thing that President Obama did. So because of the fact President Obama signed the nuclear agreement, President Trump withdrew from it. And it's also a reflection of the fact that President Trump has really cultivated close ties with Saudi Arabia and Israel, which have a very pessimistic view of Iran.
Okay, so let's look at the U.S. now. It's also getting allies together for a maritime coalition on the Straits of Hormuz. Help us understand why this, and what's the real purpose of doing something like that?
Well, Strait of Hormuz is an incredibly key geoeconomic thoroughfare. At its narrowest point, I think it's less than 20 miles, and on any given day, 20 to 40% of the world's oil is passing through there. And so Iran's attitude is that if the United States is going to sanction us and not allow us to export our oil, then we're not going to allow others to export oil either. And for that reason, I think, and we've seen over the course of the last 6 weeks, Iran has gone after oil tankers and conducted acts of sabotage. And I think there's now a growing view in Washington that it may require both the United States and U.S. allies to shepherd those oil tankers through to prevent Iranian acts of sabotage.
It certainly is a very busy strait, and one that Asia has an interest in as well. China and Japan dependent on Middle East oil. How do you see either of them perhaps joining the coalition, or perhaps, I mean, they obviously want to have a steady supply of oil. This does sort of pose problems for them.
It does, and I think for years those countries have just wanted the United States to be the policeman of the Persian Gulf, to make sure that that oil passes to and fro quite freely. I think that Japan, by virtue of the fact that Prime Minister Abe is a close ally of the United States, Japan may be more willing to play that role. I'm skeptical that the Chinese will really want to exert that type of influence in the region, especially because they have a pretty good relationship with Iran.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us. Karim Sajjadpour, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
Thank you.